It is Wednesday. The Liberty beat the Lynx last night. All-star roster is out. Locked On Women's Basketball starts now.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, guys, and we got to plug our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Guys, I'm here with Brian, a writer and reporter for the local W and Nets Daily, and also within the Nets Daily is Lucas Kaplan. Brian, Lucas, thank you for being here. We just watched the Liberty game.
Yeah.
That was a pretty good game.
That was a crazy game. They end up beating the Lynx. All right, and I want you guys to be honest here, and I know you covered the Liberty a lot. What were you looking for heading into this matchup? Brian, we'll start with you.
I would say one thing I was looking forward to seeing was the turnover count. In both their losses, they were high up there. I want to say about 20 plus in each game.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to see how they were able to take care of the basketball and be able to manage against the league's best defense coming into tonight's game.
You did say that in the article that you wrote, and I read heading into this game. And yeah, I mean, what do you guys think of the way they managed the ball throughout the entire game?
Yeah, well, as Sandy Brondello said pregame, they turned it over 21 times in the Cup final, and her staff hand-tracked 14 of those as unforced, not really due to the Lynx ball pressure. And I honestly agree. I don't know about that exact number, but they really limited the silly mistakes today. As Sandy pointed out, they weren't playing, their sixth game in 11 days. They were a little more rested today. But the ball pressure from the Lynx didn't affect them as much. They also just made cleaner decisions. There's still some areas of offensive improvement, and we're going to get to why I think we both think this Lynx matchup is really indicative of where the Liberty need to improve their strengths, weaknesses. Minnesota is just a great foil for this team through 3 games.
Wait, someone took high school English. Foil is the perfect word.
They're a foil.
For this. They're a foil. And before we really dive into the nitty-gritty of it all, I want to talk about the start of the game. Was this a different Courtney Vandersloot than during the Commissioner's Cup?
I would say that for Slew, it feels like she's getting more comfortable the more she's back on the court. I think, especially for any player, especially a starter like her, it takes you a good amount of time to sort of regain your rhythm and regain your bearings. And I think that she's really been able to do that since she came back in. She had those driving lanes tonight. Decision-making is still really on point. And I think that she gives them another good ball handler. So that way you don't have Stewie bringing the ball up the court, having to initiate the offense. You can have Sabrina fly off more screens, be more active in that way. So I think that Courtney sort of works as like a salve for the group. So that way everyone else can sort of slide back into their natural roles.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Sloot is a miracle in a lot of ways to still be able to provide that type of rim pressure at her age. I've never seen her dribble between her legs since she's been in New York, and she just keeps finding ways to penetrate that point of attack, get into the lane, make decisions. Also, like you said, she slots Benijah Laney Hamilton down a little bit in terms of decision-making burden. You get to have Sabrina off the ball, running around off screens, tap into that part of her game. And while the Liberty did close with Leonie Fiebich, which I'm sure we'll talk about in place of Sloot, having that option, even if you just play her for 20 minutes a game, is a card up Sandy's sleeve that she, is obviously missing when Sloot's not here. The point guard rotation behind her is not up to her standards, but that's because she's a Hall of Famer.
So are you finding that so we say Fiebich gets her minutes. She's so physical. Stewie says in the scrum afterwards, she's a 6'4" guard. She's so physical. She could use her body well. Do you think that they're finding that synergy between balancing her and then balancing Sloot and the way that they'll have Sloot start the game and then Fiebich finish? Is that something that they're going to be going for throughout the rest of the season, you think?
I love that the way you framed that question, because when we were talking to GM,
Thank you.
Of course, great host. When we were talking to GM Jonathan Cole preseason, right, I asked him, okay, you want to give Sandy these options with the bench. It's about optionality, but Sandy and him talked about as you progress in the season, you want to have looks. You want to be able to go to this look against this defense. You want to be able to go to option B here instead of just searching constantly. And the Liberty, you're starting to get to these different looks, right? You have Sloot offering what we just talked about, and you just plug Fiebich in, and all of a sudden the look that you're playing with completely changes. Now the smallest player in your lineup is 5'10" Sabrina, and your 2 guard is 6'4". You're switching everything. You're long. She has a quicker trigger on catch and shoot threes as opposed to Courtney Vandersloot. So you lose a little bit of ball handling, but for a team like the Lynx that flies around on defense, that you need to take catch and shoots against, that is physical, is long, that look with Fiebich in there, slotting in for a player that's 5'6", so you have a 10-inch height difference in one substitution. That's a look that, you know, Sandy's going to go to a lot, and that really she's been just she's had an A+ season for the Liberty so far, even though it took her probably a minute to get going.
Yeah. And I think that what also helps is that one thing that I think we talked about before, starting in that Phoenix game a while back, Sandy would, if it wasn't Fiebich, it would be KT.
Yeah.
So you have those options. You have really long, rangy defenders who are physical, can guard multiple positions. Even tonight, in the scrum, we asked Leo. She guarded Courtney Williams. She guarded Fee. She guarded Kayla McBride.
Yeah.
She's able to do all these things at a really high level, and she gives you that extra option on offense. So that way you make sure that the process is still there. You have Sabrina driving to the basket. Everything opens up even more when Leo was out there. And I think for her in particular, she's getting way more comfortable. She's able to, even though she's annoyed by some of the referees' decisions, she's still able to adjust within the flow of the game in real time, and it gives the team so much more versatility to work with. I think that's one of the big differences from last year. If you had to compare the two, like last year, Sandy would have to ride out the entire starting 5. Like we were there in Connecticut game 4. The bench didn't play a second half. It was the starters the whole way.
And you think about the bench, it was Marine Johannes, small guard. You know, the shot's not falling. She's not giving you much else, at least last year. KT's KT. You know what you're going to get, kind of a 3-and-D wing. Hopefully the shot's falling. And Steph Dolson, a plug-and-play big where you're really playing her in drop coverage.
Yeah.
That's about it. Now you have these wings that can handle a little bit. You know, we haven't even talked about Kennedy Burke, who's kind of a big forward with, you know, stretchability and who's a good driver. If you want to go to a guard, they played Dojkic, but Fiebich really ties this all together. As there was a sequence in the 4th quarter. She switched on to Napheesa Collier, no help, gets a stop in the post, runs the floor, misses a catch and shoot 3, but JJ gets a rebound, and you know you trust Fiebich to make those looks. You know, 40% from 3. It's just these bench options are not pigeonholed anymore. You're not so limited by what you can play, and that amplifies the stars around you. Sometimes Sabrina's a primary ball handler, running pick and roll after pick and roll. Sometimes she's off the ball, you know, running off flare screens. They're much, I don't want to say harder to guard this year, right? Because they had a great offense last year, but they're harder to game plan for, I think.
Yeah, and I guess one of the things that I remember you pointed out to me a while back was that Sandy would run Sabrina plays for Leo. So you have a 6'4" guard who can run through all these screens, who can do the things that Sabrina does, not at the same level, but still someone who can replicate it to a certain degree. So it gives you, when Sabrina's on the bench and Sloot is running the offense, you have an elite sharpshooter like like Leo, someone who can do all these kind of things. And I think that it gives the team more options to rest their big players. So you can make sure that you don't need to play Courtney heavy minutes now, so that way you can naturally nurse her through the season, so you can turn to her a little bit more if you need her in the postseason. But if all else fails, you know that you have I would say an all WNBA rookie kind of player in Leo, right?
Oh yeah,
I would say she's a certain lock to make the first team for all rookie, and it's going to be well deserved because she does so many things well. And when there's so much attention placed on like a JJ or Sabrina or Stewie, you have a player like Leo who can make those hustle plays, who can clean up and capitalize on those mistakes by opponents, and really give you that extra oomph and physicality, especially when you're going up against elite teams like a Minnesota or Connecticut or Las Vegas. Like, she really gives the team another option that those teams didn't see last year. It makes them more dangerous at the same time.
I mean, just to close on Leo, it's the defense that keeps her on the court, right? She might hit 5 threes. She might go 0 for 4, but she played 25 minutes tonight, scored 5 points. But it's because she's giving you a lot on defense. She's giving you length and switchability, and that is her floor. So you can keep her on the court because you know no matter what, no matter if she goes 0 for 6 from 3, she's going to sustain a certain level of impact. That's not something they had last year. You know, Marine goes 0 for 5 from 3, that's a bad game. KT goes 0 for 4 from 3, that's probably a bad game. She's a little better on defense. Same thing with Steph Dolson. She's not stretching the floor from 3, that's it. Leo is not shot dependent in a way that we haven't seen for this Liberty team.
We have to talk more Liberty offense. We have to talk about the greatness that is Minnesota Lynx on defense. And I want to also pose a question to you both, your Liberty experts. I want to see if we can now put Sabrina and defense in the same sentence, but that's after this. And then in the third segment, I'm going to get into the Olympics roster, but we're going to give a little bit more love to our sponsors right now. Game Time, you guys already know Game Time does so much for us. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball. And I know we're talking basketball, but guys, it's so fun to go out and watch a baseball game, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch, with killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and the lowest price guaranteed. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. I can't wait to go watch the Yankees soon enough back there at Yankee Stadium. It's going to be so fun. And I always like to check out the zone deals and the flash deals. The flash deals allow you to save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or the event. And then the zone deals save even more when you choose a section and let Game Time choose the seats. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account and redeem code LOCKEDNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Okay, guys, that's the end of the ads. Oh, thank you. But these are all also flowers to you both because you have such a great in-depth analysis and you're watching basketball from like a scouting and like a coaching perspective. I want to ask you guys, did Sabrina play defense tonight?
It's better.
Yeah. Like, I think the most impressive part is that she's still under the weather. Like, when we talked to her Sunday, her voice is like completely shot, but she's still out there. Like, one thing that she said that really sort of stood out to me is that she mentioned that like fans come from thousands of miles away to see her and they don't even know that she's under the weather, but she's like, I gotta be out there. If I can walk, I can play, and I'm gonna give them the best effort that I can. And I think that for her, that effort really sort of like endears her to the fan base in a really personal way, because she's like the first member of this super team from back in 2020. She's sort of been with them from like the darkest points to now, so she has that connection. And on tonight's sort of view, she was really working hard out there. Like, Minnesota really pressures you and sort of like hits pressure points throughout the game.
They're just so well coached.
Yeah.
If you have a weak link, like she's, is on this Liberty defense, like they're gonna get to it.
Yeah, like one thing especially is that a Cheryl Reeve team always capitalizes on any sort of mistake. And throughout the night, Sandy mentioned in postgame that whenever they made a mistake, Minnesota capitalized immediately.
I mean, the Liberty played a great defensive game, and the Lynx end up with 23 assists on 26 made baskets. Like, the reason I think we were like basking in this post-game glow is like we just watched a great game. Like, even in the cup too, it was just so high level. And both of these teams will kill you if you make mistakes. Even if your rotations are pretty good, someone will hit a three-pointer right in your face. Last week it was Bridget Carlton. Today Kayla McBride got it going. Like, there's just no room for error against either of these teams. And it's not often you say that when there's 21 turnovers in a game, or if the teams only shoot like 25% from three like tonight. But it somehow doesn't affect the level of play. And to the Sabrina point, I would just say that she's definitely improved in terms of being serviceable off the ball.
Yeah.
Like, she's not breaking down as much this year.
Yeah, because one thing that will happen a lot last year is that she sort of fall asleep off ball, and then teams would capitalize every time. Now you see the level of attention, the level of focus has gone up, and I think she's sometimes a little bit stronger than we give her credit for. So if you try to like drive through her, she can like beat you and sort of like push you back in a certain way. So I think that effort, that level of increased focus, and I think greater health, greater off-season work to build on those skills. And I think having just like rangy defenders all over the court with her, it can sort of like hide her weakness. So you get by Sabrina. Oh wait, there's John Cole Jones waiting for you at the rim. I got by this time. Here's Brianna Stewart flying in from the rafters to come and get that shot. So I think the increased continuity of the group, the length of the group really sort of allows her to sort of be more active in that way, and it encourages her to sort of give that effort, because you know that you're going to have someone to help you out in the back end. And then on the other side, you have other people who can sort of take over the load on offense. So it's not like you have to be the old James Harden, have to carry everything on offense. I'm not going to give you too much.
All right, watch out. Watch out. No, he's right. I kid.
So also to dive into more the Lynx, and I like that comparison though. I like that James Harden comparison. I think that's true. for the Lynx, they find your pressure points. Is it coaching, or is Napheesa, is she that good? Is Kayla McBride that good? Can Courtney Williams get that hot? Like, what is it about this Lynx team that's just clicking? Like, I feel like for the Liberty, we knew it was a super team coming together, and now they've had a season under their belts to really click. So there's kind of no surprises with them.
Yeah, right.
I feel like a lot more people are surprised by the Minnesota Lynx being as good as they are.
I think you should be until you watch a full game and you're just like, oh man, this is a team that's so connected on both ends. Like we were talking to Leonie Fiebich after the game. She's just like, they hit every pressure point. Like we said, if you're late on a switch, they will ghost out of it. They have an open three. If you're not switching, they'll drive the ball. And that's before you get to how I think complementary this team is built, right? Elena Smith, kind of inside out big that can punish you no matter what you do. If you switch, they will post her up. If you play drop coverage, she'll pop out. And then Fee speaks for herself, MVP candidate. But Courtney Williams can get the ball to whoever. So I think it's a combination. It's like, man, these players are really good, but why they're such a good foil for the Liberty. Their foil is that they are as well coached and they run their stuff as well. That was what was so impressive about New York last year. Yeah, they're talented, but like you get 5 new players in a room and it's the synergies there. They're connected. That's not easy to do no matter how talented the players are. It has nothing to do with talent. And in that way, I guess you could say Minnesota reminds me of that because all it takes is a quarter and you're like, damn, this is a really, really good team.
Yeah, like I tweeted during the game that she's so smooth when she gets the ball in the low block. There were a couple of possessions where it's like that footwork was just so magnificent. It's like, man, having a forward who can do everything the way that she does is so valuable, and it allows everyone else to sort of be their best selves. Like for Courtney Williams, she's not having to be burdened too much with shot creation. Kayla McBride, I think, is having her best 3-point shooting season of her career. Alana Smith is really solid at the center role. Like she was excellent the first 2 times she played New York. Dorka is pretty solid off the bench. They have that talent and that continuity and chemistry all across the roster. And I think that there is a level of comfort and execution and excellence that Cheryl brings to that group that really sort of like allows them to be, okay, we're here. We know exactly what to do. We scouted our opponents really well. We can capitalize and pressure you in so many different ways. And it's a situation where you have to have, I think we actually asked Brandon about this in postgame as well too, like the level of focus that you need to beat a team like this requires you to give your very best effort every single night. So it pushes, they're a tremendous team already, and it forces like great teams who are on their level to rise it and see how they can surpass it.
I'm glad you said that about Cheryl, because the other thing that really stands out is everybody on this team plays to their strengths, and there's not a lot of passivity that you'll get when there's a lot of talent that comes together. Like, okay, let me not do what I'm good at because I want to help out my teammate, right? Make sure that she gets going. There's none of that on this team. I mean, Courtney Williams is totally free to operate, play her mid-range game, dice people up in the pick and roll. Carlton, Kayla McBride, I mean, nobody is hesitant to do what they do best. And that is another area where you see coaching. Like, she's getting the most out of these players. And beyond that, everything they do makes sense. So if they're running a pick and roll and Elena Smith, right, is not a great one-on-one player, and all of a sudden they're switching, right? And so you don't really want to get to a post-up with Elena Smith. They'll reverse the ball immediately. Fee setting a screen, rolling to the basket. Now she has a switch. You can't get away with anything against this team. They will exploit it. They will make the right decision. So even when on a night where the shots weren't falling, they made every 3-pointer in Long Island in the cup. Like grenades, a garbage shot clock, whatever. And that's high-level basketball on its own. But so is the fact when they're still putting so much pressure on you, even when the shots aren't falling. So I think, man, like I would watch, forget 5 games. They should just play each other the rest of the season.
Oh, I thought you were going to say 7-game series.
It's 7, dude. They should just do this for 20 more games.
Every game. Guys, I think we should do this for 20 more games. This podcast. Brian, Lucas, guys, thank you so much for coming on Locked On Women's Basketball. Where could people find your work?
I am found everywhere online at BusyXB. You can find me at Nets Daily in the local W and at an arena near you.
Oh,
I like that.
Bars.
I like that.
Yeah, Lucas Kaplan. My Twitter handle is just Lucas Kaplan _. I write all about a lot of basketball for Nets Daily, Nets, Liberty, and general basketball stuff for the swishtheory.com, which is a great website. And I guess you can find me, I don't know, if you want to come play pickup hoops in New York sometime, hit me up. That's where you can find me.
And he plays for money. And
just Whoa, so you know. Since when?
Just kidding, guys. All right, segment 3 is going to be solo, but Brian, Lucas, thank you guys for coming on.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, it's me. Before we get into the all-star roster that's going to be playing Team USA in just a couple weeks, I want to tell you a little bit more about the Locked On streaming channel. So are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? You have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, right now. A free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest sports stories without all the screaming, even though I'm literally raising my voice right now. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Now, the final segment, the solo show. We're talking about WNBA All-Stars. So what I want to do here with you guys is, I'm sure by now you've seen the list of the rosters, right? So we're just going to go over real quick, thanks to our folks at ESPN, we're going to go over the rosters themselves and how they're going to match up. But real quick too, I'm sitting here, Liberty post-game press conference. For those not watching the video, there's Liberty logos all behind me. We were here when Jonquel Jones found out that she made the All-Star team. Yes, she's one of those players. And Sabrina was banging on this table. Sorry, audio listeners, I had to do it. And Jonquel goes, yeah, but I'm going to still block her shot, though. So it's kind of crazy. You're going to have teammates playing teammates, really. And the beauty of it all is, Stu even told us, hey, more people are going to watch this game, and more players are going to be more competitive throughout the game, because it just makes for a more competitive atmosphere naturally. So let's go over real quick, once again, the USA roster. The Lynx, Napheesa Collier. Then we also have Kalia Copper, Chelsea Gray, Brittany Griner, Sabrina Ionescu, Jewel Lloyd, Kelsey Plum, Breanna Stewart, Diana Taurasi, Alyssa Thomas, A'ja Wilson, and Jackie Young are people representing our country, if you're in America like I am. So on that team, we have the Lynx covered. We have the Mercury covered. We have the Aces covered. We have the Liberty covered. We have the Storm covered. We even have the Sun covered, okay? The Aces with the most people being A'ja Wilson, Jackie Young, Chelsea Gray, and Kelsey Plum. Then the Mercury having Kalia Copper, Brittany Griner, Diana Taurasi, and then solo from the Lynx, Napheesa Collier, 2 from the Liberty, Sabrina Ionescu, Breanna Stewart, and then AT, Alyssa Thomas from the Connecticut Sun. Now let's get over to this WNBA All-Star roster, and then I'm going to tell you the top 5 finishers in voting and how that fan voting is broken down, okay? So here is the WNBA All-Star roster. DeWanna Bonner, Aaliyah Boston, Caitlin Clark, Alicia Gray, De'Erica Hamby, Brianna Jones, Jonquel Jones, Kayla McBride, Kelsey Mitchell, Arike Ogunbowale, Nneka Ogwumike, and Angel Reese. Wow. Huh. Any surprises? Snubs, if you want to know about snubs, are going to be coming out later this week. Okay, so let's talk about the teams represented. The Suns, DeWanna Bonner, Brianna Jones. Then from the Fever, any surprises? Aaliyah Boston, Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Mitchell. From the Chicago Sky, the Lone Ranger and Angel Reese. From the New York Liberty, the Lone Ranger, Jonquel Jones. From the Dallas Wings, Arike. From the Minnesota Lynx, Kayla McBride. From the Sparks, De'Erica Hamby and Alicia Gray from the Dream. So now let's get into the juiciness of it all. The top 10 all-star vote getters, which is determined. This is the breakdown. So half from fan voting, 50% from fan voting, 25% from current player voting, and 25% media voting. Not Gigi Speer. They didn't ask me, not yet. they were automatically named to the All-Star game, which is like the top 10 All-Star game. It was automatically named. With those who weren't previously named to the Olympic 5-on-5 team assigned to Team WNBA. So obviously it's Team WNBA versus the women's national team. So maybe they'll go Team USA for that. So the top 10 players were, in alphabetical order, Boston, Clark, Napheesa Collier, Kalia Copper, Hamby, Sabrina Ionescu, Ogunbowale, Brianna Stewart, Asia Wilson, and Jackie Young. Clark and Boston received the most fan votes, followed by Wilson, Stewart, and Reese. So let's get into those numbers, okay? 700,735 people voted for Caitlin Clark. Any surprises there? 618,680 people, Aaliyah Boston. Asia Wilson, 607,300. Brianna Stewart, 424,135. Angel Reese from the Chicago Sky, 381,518. So Clark leading the way with 700,000. Angel Reese with 380,000. Guys, I know there's so much to break down in this roster. Again, for the audio, I'm sorry for banging on the table. I'm sorry for clapping, but this is a crazy night for women's basketball. These are all your WNBA All-Stars. That was a New York Liberty breakdown with Lucas and with Brian. Tremendous, tremendous reporters. So check out their work. I'm Gigi Speer. Find out all my work on social at Locked On Women's Basketball. And you're going to be seeing a lot of me, because if you're an everydayer, tune back in on our nation's Day of Independence, July 4th, for a special episode on drum roll, the history of basketball in the USA, specifically women's basketball. This is Locked On Women's Basketball. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for making our podcast your first listen every day. Make sure you check out the Locked On streaming channel, and make sure you tune back in tomorrow, July 4th, for your girls' breakdown of the history of women's basketball in the United States. I'm Gigi Speer, and this was Locked On Women's Basketball. Thank you for listening.